Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lecture, we study another important market structure called oligopoly. Oligopoly exists when a small number of the large firms account for all or most of the sales in an industry. This market structure is very common in the real world. Examples include Boeing and Airbus in the large commercial aircraft, and Coca-Cola and Pepsi in the soft drinks. What makes oligopoly unique is that firms are large enough to affect the market, and each firm must consider how rivals may respond to its decisions. If oligopolists compete aggressively, prices may fall, costs are pressured downward, and profits may become small, similar to outcomes in perfect competition. However, if oligopolies cooperate or collude, they may behave more like a monopoly by restricting output, raising price, and earning high profits. So oligopoly lies between competition and monopoly, but with an added element of strategic rivalry. Let's reinforce the definition. Unlike perfect competition, where many small firms exist, oligopoly has only a few large firms. Unlike monopoly, there is more than one seller, so firms must always watch each other. Each firm's pricing, advertising, production, and investment decisions can strongly affect rivals. This mutual dependence is the central feature of oligopoly. That means firms cannot make decisions in isolation. They must think strategically. Now let's compare the four market structures we have studied. Perfect competition has many firms, identical products, no barriers to entry, and no pricing power. Monopolist competition has many firms with differentiated products and low barriers to entry. Firms have some pricing power because products are unique. Oligopoly has a small number of large firms, usually with high barriers to entry. Products may be identical or differentiated. Because only a few firms dominate the market, each firm has significant market power, but that power depends on how rivals respond. This is why the table describes oligopoly as mutual interdependence. Monopoly has one firm with high barriers to entry and the greatest pricing power. In all four structures, firms use the logic of profit maximization, but the competitive environment changes the outcomes. Now let's look at the key terms in oligopoly. Because oligopoly combines the barriers to entry with a small number of the firms, firms may be tempted to cooperate rather than compete. This leads to a concept of collusion. Collusion occurs when firms act together to reduce output and keep prices high. They do this by limiting industry production, charging higher prices, and sharing the profit created by those high prices. When firms successfully collude, they behave similarly to monopoly. A formal organization created for collusion is called a cartel. A cartel is a group of the firms that agree to produce the monopoly quantity and charge the monopoly price. However, collusion is difficult to maintain because each firm has an incentive to cheat. To understand why collusion is difficult, economists use game theory. Game theory is a branch of mathematics that studies situations where decision makers choose actions while considering how others may respond. Payoff depends not only on your own decisions, but also on decisions of others. One of the most famous examples in economics is the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma is a situation where cooperation creates the best joint outcome, but Individual self-interest creates pressure to defect. This concept helps explain why oligopolists may fail to cooperate even when cooperation would increase profits. Let's look at the classic story. Two criminal partners are arrested and police wants to interrogate them separately. They cannot communicate with each other, and each prisoner has two choices. One choice is to confess, and the other choice is to remain silent. The final sentence each prisoner receives depends on not only their own choice, but also on what the other prisoner chooses. This is why the situation becomes strategic. Now let's analyze the payoff matrix. If both prisoners stay silent, each receives 2 years in prison. This is the best collective outcome. If prisoner A stays silent but prisoner B confesses, then A receives 8 years while B receives only 1 year. If A confesses and B stays silent, then A receives 1 year and B receives 8 years. If both confess, each receives 5 years. So now think like an individual prisoner. Regardless of what the other person does, confessing gives a better personal outcome without trust or communication. So both prisoners confess. But when both confess, they each received 5 years, which is worse than the 2 years they would have received through mutual silence. This is the prisoner's dilemma. Rational self-interest creates a worse collective outcome. Now let's apply this logic to oligopoly. Suppose there are only two firms. This is called a duopoly, which is an oligopoly with two firms. The two firms meet and discuss cooperation to keep prices high. They can each choose one of two strategies. They can cooperate by keeping outcome low, which supports high prices, or they can cheat by increasing outcome, trying to capture more market share. This situation mirrors the, you know, prisoner's dilemma. Now let's look at the payoffs. If both firms cooperate and keep output low, each earns $1,000. This is the best joint outcome. If firm A cooperates but firm B cheats, then A earns only $200 while B earns $1,500. If A cheats and B cooperates, A earns $1,500 while B earns $200. If both cheat and expand output, price falls and each earns only $400. Now think strategically. If firm A suspects B will cheat, A also wants to cheat to avoid earning only $200. Since both firms think this way, both choose high output. They each earn $400 even though they could have earned $1,000 each through cooperation. This explains why collusion is unstable. Now we ask an important question. If cheating is so tempting, how can cooperation be maintained? One solution is to create penalties for firms that break the agreement. With strong penalties, a cartel has a better chance of maintaining high profits. Firms may also create informal strategies that pressure members to stick to agreed output and pricing behavior. One example is the kinked demand curve. The kinked demand curve arises when oligopoly firms are willing to match price cuts, but not willing to match price increases. This creates a strong incentive for firms to keep prices stable. Let's look at the example. Suppose a cartel member is expected to produce 10,000 units and charge a price of $500. Now imagine the firm tries to increase output to 11,000 units and lower price. Other firms immediately match the price cut. As a result, the market price falls sharply to $300. So the cheating firm gains a little because rivals respond aggressively. This discourages a cutting price. Now consider the opposite situation. Suppose the firm raises price from $500 to $550. Other firms do not match the increase. Consumers switch to rival firms offering the lower price. As a result, the firm's sales fall sharply to 5,000 units. So increasing price is also unattractive. Because price cuts trigger retaliation and price increases lose customers, firms often keep prices unchanged. This is why oligopoly markets may show price rigidity. The king-to-demand curve helps explain why prices in oligopoly can remain stable for a long time. Thank you for watching.